What's up, everybody? This is Alex with WMD back again. Today we're going to be making a complex style oscillator, complex oscillator style voice, I guess, out of some WMD modules and some WMD SSF modules. So you might have seen my lo-fi Instagram videos and gotten the notion that this might have been coming, or gotten the idea that I'm really into this. Basically, as you guys know, if you've heard my music before, I'm super into like very tonal Western bass sounds. I like house music, techno music that has like driving, rolling bass lines and stuff like that. And my system is kind of pretty much set, but what I've been missing for a while is like ambient textures that are not so much in the tonal realm. And so I've been really like lusting over a complex oscillator. And so I started researching about it, and I went on to Learning Modular, Chris Meyer's site, and just kind of got the basic idea of what a complex oscillator is. I also read the patch tweak definition, so if you don't have that book yet, check it out. It's super cool reference just to have around. And basically the idea is two oscillators, one that can modulate the other, so you can either do frequency modulation or amplitude modulation, and then some sort of wave shaper on the end of that. So basically what I've got here is two spectrum oscillators. Both of those have the ability to do frequency modulation as well as PWM, so you can get some cool sounds in your square waves. And it also has this CRP ESP wave, which is basically either a saw or a ramp wave with a pulse in the middle or on the front of it. So that's a really cool thing you can actually do pulse width on a saw style wave, so you can get a completely different sound there. And we've got a DVCA that's going to take care of my amplitude modulation. So anything I want to do in the amplitude, region of things, I can do with the DVCA. That's a dual VCA. It's a digital VCA. We aren't going to be using the zero crossing detectors or any of the real like digital aspects of it. It's an analog, all analog signal path. It just has digital zero crossing detection, so you don't get clicks when you're using fast, snappy envelopes. We probably won't use that because we're just doing amplitude modulation. I've also got an ultrafold here, so that's going to be my wave shaper at the end of it. So the ultrafold, rather than something to calm down the waveform, is actually going to even make it even crazier. So that's an all analog wavefolder. It's got feedback, which is really cool. On the positive side, we can use as a crossfader, so we might take that second oscillator and put a waveform into that crossfader, so you can get some extra kind of sounds. We've got the wavefold, the wave shift, and the drive, and the drive just makes a sine wave sound super cool. So we'll mess around with that a little bit, and from there on, we're just going to be experimenting and seeing what kind of crazy sounds we can make. I've got some drums here, so we can have some reference and have some tempo, and not just completely put ourselves to sleep with ambient drones. We'll like do some rhythmic stuff and see what it kind of sounds like to integrate it with the kind of music I was talking about earlier, with some more like housey driving kind of music with a bass line. So we'll see what we can use this as a lead or as a texture or something like that. I've also got a multi-mode envelope here and a mini slew, so those are my two envelopes. And I've got a VCA, the multi-mode VCA, and I've also got an MMF filter in here, a blender, 4-channel mixer, and then a Doppler delay. So we'll jump into the delay a little bit. All right, so yeah, without any further talking about stuff, let's do this. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. So right now I've just got the blender I'm using as my output, and I'm running it straight into my mixer over here, which is under this camera. And that is just going into my DAW. So basically, we're just going to take a sine wave out. We're going to listen to that sine wave for a second. Make it a little bit easier to listen to there. And we'll just listen to some FM real quick. So if I take another sine and put it into the FM input here, kind of make some cool crazy sounds just in that. And FM is kind of all about the tuning, right? It's one of those things that's kind of really difficult to make sound perfect. But that's kind of the beauty of it. So we'll just tune these to be relatively in the same spot. And now we'll listen to it. There we go, right? That's pretty sweet. We can move up and down octaves to find kind of like cool bell sounds. All right, so instead of going straight into the blender now, I'm going to go into the DVCA. And CV's all the way up. So now we're going to take this sine wave, instead of putting it into the spectrum, we're just going to put it into the CV input of the DVCA. So you can hear this is the sound with no modulation. And then here's the sound with our spectrum modulating the DVCA. Again, we can change the octaves, get different sounds, and get some cool sounds. Now we can mix the two, right? So we'll take this nifty stackable cable here, and we'll plug it into the FM input, and we'll just do both. Maybe just do a little bit of a mix here on the FM. That sounds pretty cool. So now I've got a voltage block sequencer here off camera. I'm going to just be running the one of the outputs, 4-step sequence, just a super simple sequence, just to give us a little bit of variance here. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll just modulate both of the volt per octave inputs. And now both oscillators are tracking at the same frequency, so it'll sound like it's a little bit more in tune, right? We still have no envelope on the VCA. We still don't have anything modulating like amplitude besides the amplitude modulation on the DVCA to create just a little bit of those higher tone harmonics. So without the amplitude modulation, this is without it. We'll just get crazy FM, and we'll bring back in that amplitude modulation here. So it's kind of cool to hear both of them working together, right? So now we'll run through the ultrafold, the wave folder, which I'm going to be using as our wave shaper section of the complex oscillator, right? So, all right, so it sounds pretty much about the same, and we're going to turn up the drive only. Now check out the wave folder. This is just going to kind of just set it off, right? Wave shift. Just completely new territories. And then we'll add a little bit of positive feedback. And then bring that drive back. Oh, man. Woo. Let's just get a kick drum in here just for kick drum sakes. Alright, that sounds pretty great. So now what we'll do is we'll just go through the other side of the digital VCA here, and that way we'll get a little bit of rhythmic action. So we're going to come out of here and go back into our blender, and then we'll be using the same, we're just going to be using a 16th note clock that's from the Metron. It's just straight 16th notes. It's the same clock that's telling our voltage block when to change. So it's basically every time voltage block changes notes, we're going to get a new note. We'll get a new envelope. So we'll plug that into the multimode envelope here, and then we'll take the out of the multimode envelope, plug it into the DVCA here. Get a little bit more rhythmic there. Man, now we're gonna get some kick drum in here. Put some hi-hats. Speed it up. And again, just messing around with the octaves on the first spectrum. Real quick, we're going to talk about the difference between carrier and modulator. So the modulator oscillator is our first oscillator. I've been just saying it's the first oscillator. That's not really that much help. So this is the one that is modulating the second one. And the second oscillator is the carrier. So that is the oscillator that we're actually listening to. Why it's called the carrier wave or the carrier oscillator, is because the first oscillator's waveform is modulating the second one, which is basically injecting that waveform into the second oscillator's waveform, therefore creating more harmonics, overtones, that whole kind of thing. So the first spectrum that I've been saying, the first spectrum, that is going to be called the modulator. And the second one we're going to be calling the carrier wave, or carrier oscillator. Let's turn that back in. Turn my clock back on. So yeah, we can mess around with the modulator's octaves and stuff and still stay in tune. We'll grab another stackable here. And check this guy out. So now we're going to take the envelope output from our multimode envelope, and we're going to run it straight into the FM input on our modulator's wave, or modulator oscillator. And now we're going to just like completely leave tone behind and go straight into laser land. Alright, so yeah, now we're doing no frequency modulation over the modulator. We're just doing, this is our original voice basically. And every once in a while, you know, you just add in that envelope and you just get a little, the pitch envelope, and you just get a little bit of those laser sounds. And then you can kind of like do some drops, you know, take your kick drum out, maybe add some claps. And then just bring it all back. What have we got going on here? So basically, this is your standard complex oscillator setup. We have very little outside modulation happening. We can introduce that envelope, like I was saying earlier, to get some crazy pitch sounds, which all of these elements are going to interact really well with each other, right? So let's we're going to turn the amplitude modulation off and just get the straight FM sounds. And right now, what we'll do is we'll just hear the ultrafold. So here's our sine wave, right? And now we'll just like turn up some wavefolding. Maybe give some shift in there, give it a little bit of drive, and then that feedback. So one thing we can do is take another output from our voltage block here and run it into one of these inputs. So first of all, we'll try this shift CV. Adding some subtle differences there, which is pretty cool. Now we'll just go into the wavefold input with another channel. Boom. Add some of that FM back in. That's exponential FM. Now we'll try out a little bit of the linear. Let's bring that kick drum back in. That was super fun. Maybe a little bit of that pitch envelope. Woo! that exponential. I always want to call it experimental. That's not what it is. It's exponential. That would be a pretty cool mode of synthesis, right? We're just gonna say, oh, we're just doing experimental FM. This isn't your standard FM, you know? There we go. Got that amplitude modulation back in there. Alright, so now we'll take an output from our mod box, doing a nice slow modulation. And what should we do? Why don't we do the feedback CV here? And then, like I was saying earlier, with our feedback knob, we can basically use it as a crossfader. So this feedback input here, my patch is getting pretty crazy. So now you can hear, this is essentially this oscillator that we're hearing. Now with our mod box, we'll modulate the feedback here. So now we're basically crossfading between the sound of this one and the sound of this one. And why don't we just do a little bit of PWM as well. Nice and slow, since we're listening to a PWM wave here. And if I take this out yet again, let's do a sine. Nice little sound there. Plug that back in. So now we're getting a pretty interesting rhythm here, just out of modulating back and forth between the audio of both modules, both oscillators, with the ultrafold. So using the ultrafold as a crossfader between those two oscillators' sound. Super fun just to make some crazy laser sounds, right? Now we're gonna bring in a bass line from our being controlled by the architect and the PDO here. Hi-hats. So now I'm going to use my mini slew as another external LFO here, and I'm going to run it through my my multi-mode VCA here. Got the bias up, so basically we're going to have no change here, and we'll run this into the feedback CV. Just giving it a little bit of extra grit there. So another fun thing to do, what we're hearing now is just the second oscillator going through the DVCA straight, or going through the wavefolder straight, excuse me. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this envelope here from the mini slew to allow the FM to happen every once in a while. So we'll turn this FM up, and we will take our envelope, we'll just take the variable out here. We'll run it into the CVB. Now let's just make that happen in time somehow. Let's figure that out. So I'll take another output of my, the Metron trigger sequencer here after I grab a cable. Alright, so basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my another output of my Metron, and I'm going to trigger the mini slew just to happen every few bars. So this is channel 11. We'll do an 8-bar sequence. And then on the beginning of every sequence, I'll just have the mini slew trigger off, and then we'll do a nice slow fall. Here comes. Ooh, nice. Let's just do every 4 bars, why don't we? Speed this, make this a little bit slower. Yeah, no, we're gonna do every 8 bars because that's way better. Here it goes. And so that's, yeah. Man, so all of that just coming from, I mean, we're literally listening to one oscillator right now. That's the only thing we're hearing. I've taken the crossfader source out of the ultrafold, so we're literally just listening to one oscillator with a tiny bit of delay, and some modulation from another oscillator, and then just some crazy wavefolding from the ultrafold. So, I mean, that's just one patch that we got together with this little system, but man, it's just like so many fun possibilities to use with just 2 oscillators. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and check out all of our other videos. We've got a bunch of tutorials, demos, teasers, you know, the whole thing. We are a company after all, so be sure to check that out. Check out our modules at check out our modules at wmdevices.com. We are WMD. My name's Alex. Thanks again. We'll see you guys soon.